Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss a topic under the chapter Organisms and Populations, that is called as your responses to abiotic factors. Now see, when we were talking about the organisms, a group of organisms which are capable of interbreeding among themselves, we have termed them as population. Now there are so many populations existing on this earth, isn't it? But all these populations cannot equally tackle with the various kinds of changes which has taken place in the environment throughout the time from when the earth was formed till today. Now why is it that some organisms are so well adapted in certain place, and why is the reason that some are not so well adapted? The reason is because there is some internal mechanism in organisms, different types of organisms, different populations of organisms, which make them suitable for surviving into the changes in the environment for certain groups, and for certain groups they cannot adjust. Now those organisms which can regulate. Now the question arises, why will they regulate? The reason is because one organism has to do some work to its optimum level for its survival. So until and unless it gets that right kind of temperature so that all the metabolic activities of the body of that organism can function properly, the organism's survival won't be fruitful on this earth, isn't it? So depending upon that, we can categorize the different organisms into conformers and regulators. Now conformers and regulators, what does it mean is that the internal homeostasis, that is the steady state of an organism, if it can be maintained by a group of population, by a group of organisms, we call them as regulators. That means they can regulate. They can regulate either by means of thermoregulation, that means the body heat by increasing or decreasing, or by means of osmotic regulation, as we see in case of the aquatic organisms. If an organism is surviving in a saline water, if an organism is living in a water in which the salt concentration is less, then how will it regulate the body? That is called the osmo regulation. And when the outside temperature goes high, the body temperature has to be maintained to a certain level so that the enzymes can function normally. Then we call it as your thermoregulation. So by means of these two physiological processes, that is thermoregulation and by means of your osmoregulation, those organisms, those population of organisms which can regulate their body temperature to live favorably on this earth, to do all the functioning of the body properly, we call them as regulators. If we talk about the animal kingdom, in the animal kingdom, the mammals, the birds, some lower vertebrates and some lower invertebrates can do this process of regulation of their body, and we call them as your regulators. They are finely adjusted. Okay, in the summer season you will see that sometimes the dog is sitting under the shade and the tongue of the dog is out and a lot of saliva, it is salivating. Why? Because the body heat, it is evaporating out, so that a cooling effect can be brought to. But plants do not have this internal mechanism of regulating their body temperature. Most of the animals on this earth, 99% almost, cannot regulate, and as a result they are called as your conformers. So conformers, what do? They cannot adjust, they cannot keep a constant body temperature, or they do not have any kind of mechanism to keep the body temperature constant. So according to the temperature which is changing in the environment, they adjust by various kinds of adaptations in them, or by various kinds of physiological activities. Now what are those physiological activities? What do they do actually? But before coming to that, let us talk about these partial regulators. Now what are these partial regulators? These are the smaller mammals which whose body surface area is more with respect to their volume. So as a result, they can easily easily they can expel out the heat, and they can suspend their life activities. So they don't need to spend extra energy, or they don't have to think about any kind of extra phenomenon to adjust their body temperatures. So those are called as your partial regulators. According to the changing environment, just doing suspending certain physiological functioning of their body, if they can adjust with the changing environment and they can survive well, we call them as your partial regulators. Examples of partial regulators will be like that of your shrews. These are the lower mammals, like that of your ground squirrels. Okay, so those will be called as your partial regulators. Now let us come to this conformers. Now conformers, as they cannot regulate a constant body temperature, and they cannot always keep on doing the thermoregulation and that is osmo regulation. Now the question can come, why not in the thousands of years of formation of the earth they could not adapt themselves, or they could not form this osmo regulation process or thermoregulation process in them? Because here you see the same thing comes, that when it is summertime, why is that a group of people have the air conditioner in their house, and why most of the population across our country do not have the air conditioner? It is because of the expenditure. So if you do not have the expenses, if you do not have the money, if you do not have the resources to do, how will you do it, isn't it? So same is with that of these conformers. Now what do the conformers do? They migrate to help themselves survive in the changing environment. If they cannot adjust, they will migrate to a certain place which is favorable for their survival. Like for example, the Siberian ducks, you might have heard about them. The Siberian cranes, which come all along the thousands of kilometers, fly across and come to India, come to the Indian subcontinent to stay during the winter season, and when again the summer arrives, they again return back to Siberia. So this is how they can adjust with the changing conditions. That is what is these animals can do. Then you will also find, in case of certain group of organisms, this one which I have just now said, this is called the migration. Okay, so migration is a phenomenon by which an organism moves from unfavorable place to that of the favorable place, and then they can survive and again return back when the favorable condition is achieved. Another one is called suspension. Suspend the functioning of the organism. Now how will they suspend the functioning of the organism? You must have read in your class 11 as well as when you read about biological classification, that certain low group of organisms, be it bacteria or fungus, they develop endospores, isn't it? They develop spores. So what do? They form a kind of capsule. They encapsulate themselves during the unfavorable conditions, and when again the conditions are favorable, the capsules burst open and the spores are liberated. When they fall into the suitable substratum, they again grow. So this is suspension of their life conditions, and again moving on to a normal activity when the favorable conditions is achieved. So suspension of the life activities on the arrival of the unfavorable conditions or situations is also one of the way by which the conformers, they can adjust themselves. There is a topic in your a book regarding these organisms adjustment with the environment, that is called which organisms are adjusted well, that is called adaptation. Now adaptation is the physiological process of an organism in which an organism survives better in the changing environment and is acclimatized well compared to that of the other organisms residing in some other environment. Like for example, take a small instance that you are staying in a plain land and suddenly you plan to go for a hilly region, like that for example, say you go to Everest or you go to Mansarovar. So there you will see the atmospheric pressure is quite low over there, isn't it? As well as the temperature is quite cold over there. So everyone cannot adjust over there. You find breathing difficulties. You find the work to be done there very difficult. You feel so cold. Your body, you start shivering. It's so cold, it's so chilling that you cannot adjust in the beginning. But after 1 or 2 days, you will find that gradually, with the help of the woolen garments or with the help of your bonfire or the fireplace in your room and all, you gradually get accustomed to the too much cold environment where you are subjected to suddenly. But think about those organisms which are living for thousands of years in a particular climatic condition. So definitely they will adapt certain things because of which they can well live in those harsh conditions, isn't it? If you go to polar regions, if you will find that there are the animals whose ear is shorter, their limbs is shorter. This is called Allen's rule. Okay, it is written in your book. Allen's rule means the colder region animals, mammals especially, they will be having smaller ears, they will be having smaller limbs to adjust or to adapt themselves well with the colder environment residing over there. Similarly, if you go to desert, you will find camel over there which has a hump It is actually the stored fat over there. It will drink plenty of water at a time, and it can go out without water for say 20 days, isn't it? So that is the adaptation in case of camels. You will find the kangaroo rat are there, desert rats are there. What do the desert rats do? The desert rats hardly they urinate. Their fecal matter is very dry, and they have very low rate of that is your metabolism in their body. Sometimes the snakes also, you will find that the snakes, what do? When there is a lot of sunlight outside, they come and bask in the sun to get to accommodate the heat from the environment, and then they can survive. You might have heard about hibernation, you might have heard about activation. Now this hibernation is winter sleep. During the winter time, certain cold-blooded animals, they will bury themselves under the soil, and similarly when it is too much high temperature outside, they also bury themselves under the soil so that they remain cool over there. So these are the various kinds of adaptations which an organism adapts to survive better with the kind of environment in which it is residing. So today we had discussed about how the organisms, according to the various kind of abiotic factors available in the environment, can regulate themselves or can maximize their body utility, the enzymes utility, so that their metabolism is proper and they can survive better in the environment by means of either regulating their body, by means of suspending, by means of migrating, so by means of certain adaptations. So this is all about this small topic which today I have discussed with you. I hope you have understood the topic well, and also you will go through this topic from your NCERT book. That's all for today's class.